Okay, we'll begin.
Yep, we're good to go.
Okay. I hope I'm audible. Hi,
Yeah, yeah.
everyone. Okay, thank you, Dev. Hi, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to day two of Seeds workshop on how to prepare for an LLM abroad. I'm Hamsadhwani, and I'm a fellow with Seed. I'll be moderating today's session with my co-fellow, Devrat Arya. For those of you attending one of Seed's sessions for the first time, I'd like to tell you a bit about us. SEED is an organization that works towards improving the representation of marginalized communities in the legal field. We do this through a variety of ways. We do this through direct impact initiatives, capacity building sessions, such as the session today, and research. In today's session, we're going to be discussing the Fulbright Scholarship. Our wonderful speakers for today are Professor Gautaman Ranganathan and Mr. Aman Badood. Before we move on to the session and before Dave can introduce our speakers, I'd like to request everyone to keep yourselves muted throughout the session until it's time for audience questions. And feel free to always put up your questions in the chat. Dave and I will be collecting them and relaying them if you'd like us to do that. And of course, you can always ask them yourselves. For those of you joining us on YouTube, on our YouTube live stream today, you as well may ask questions on the YouTube chat, and we'll make sure to collate them and relay them to our speakers. Dave, would you like to introduce our speakers now?
Yeah, sure. So with us today we have Professor Gautaman Ranganathan. Gautaman is a Fulbright Nehru Fellow. He graduated from NLSIU Bengaluru in 2010. He did his LLM at the University of Texas School of Law in 2020. He has worked extensively on LGBTQIA plus rights. His work is at the intersection of equality, human rights, mental health, and marginalization. Along with him, we have Advocate Aman Vadoo. Aman graduated from Ramaiah Law School in 2010 and has received the prestigious Fulbright Nehru Master's Fellowship in 2020 to do his LLM. He has an expertise in citizenship law and has been practicing at the Guwahati High Court. We are very delighted to have both of you with us, Gautam and Aman. The stage is all yours. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that introduction, Deep. Just checking if you can hear me all right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let me get started. Thank you very much to Seed for inviting us for this very important session. I'm just so glad that Seed is taking up the work that you are taking up, which is really necessary and long overdue, if I may say so. So very quickly, I want to do two things today. One is, of course, do an information dissemination, which can be, of course, found in the website of the United States India Education Foundation. I will share the links shortly on the chat box for everybody to go through that. The second thing that I'll do first is really to, kind of recognize and acknowledge the uniqueness of this event and the need for this event, right? So how is this event very different from any other similar workshops that might have happened, or say any Delhi organization that provides, say, career guidance and so on, right? And I think the answer lies in Seed's vision of kind of inclusion in the legal profession, and the legal education and legal profession. So I just wanted to start off by really saying, what is it about studying abroad that is kind of sought after, and what is the reason that we need to have more diversity in people going abroad. And one of the answers that Seed has is really about representation. Kind of the inaugural address is also by Justice Chandrachud, says that kind of why is representation important. But for me, in addition to representation, it's also a question of distribution. It's about the distribution of the social capital that arises out of kind of studying abroad. It's about distribution of the wealth to even be able to do this kind of education, which is rather costly affair, especially in the US. So for me, it's really about the question of just distribution, given that people from dominant identities are disproportionately represented in universities abroad. So I want to recognize that, and also to speak about how kind of people with um, say generational wealth as well, both social capital as well as just regular capital, the money wealth, have one step ahead. I need not kind of elaborate on this, because many of us participating would have experienced it ourselves firsthand. But really, in very subtle ways this operates, which is just by virtue of having cousins and family members who have done this process. From a young age, you might have heard things like SOP, TOEFL, this and that, and you kind of get acclimatized to do that. Whereas for people who have not heard these terms or these processes regularly, it might be an overwhelming kind of an experience to process a vast range of information. So I'm very happy that Seed is providing this platform to facilitate that awareness about these processes and these opportunities, and kind of expedite it for everybody, and in particular to students and young professionals from marginalized communities, right? And of course, the kind of disadvantages that I feel like have does exist is, of course, an inability to access social capital and generational wealth, but also just some of us, at least from marginalized communities, experience a constant second guessing and reluctance to take the big leap, the leap of faith. So I would really encourage all of you participating today and listening in on YouTube and so on to really take the leap of faith. If you really want to pursue anything, just go for it, and don't think of it and stay with the fear, or kind of with the initial reluctance for too long, and really take the leap of faith, and that really is helpful. So having said those some very initial remarks, I would directly jump into the kind of technicalities of the Fulbright Nehru Fellowship. So the United States India Education Foundation, which is an institute that is bilateral, it's set up by a bilateral treaty between United States and India. They have similar bilateral agreements with different countries. So the Indian counterpart is called the USIF, and they really run this scholarship. And the Master's Fellowship is just one part of a very larger Fulbright program that also has research scholars, that has PhD researchers who are registered in Indian universities but go for research for a short period of time to universities in the US, and so on and so forth. So for a broad kind of requirement for all the Fulbright categories of scholarship can be found in the first link that I'm just sending in. And as you can see, the very first point, it says that you must be a responsible Indian citizen who can contribute to a full and fair picture of the culture and civilization of India, and thereby help to promote, and this is key to keep in your mind when you write your SOP also, is to promote understanding and friendship between the peoples of the United States and India. So the Fulbright Scholarship does focus on academic excellence, leadership, and so on, like every other scholarship, but has an added emphasis on your ability to represent the US-India relationships. In fact, you will be asked to respond to a short question in that regard, right? We will focus on the Fulbright Master's Fellowship that both Aman has received and will be going to the US shortly, and which I have completed, which really provides an opportunity for a variety of topics that they set out in the USIF website, which I think Hamsadwani shared, but I'm sharing it again. And this includes gender studies, international affairs, and so on, which are allied topics to people who might have done an undergraduate degree in law. So international legal studies is the category under which we pursue an LLM with the Fulbright scholarship. But if you choose to shift stream and kind of do an MA in gender studies or an international diplomacy, international affairs course, you could feel free to apply under that category as well. And as the USIF website clearly says, these categories are not watertight university, the university might call it. So very, very bare minimum. So the kind of things that you're required to do is to give a statement of purpose and a research proposal along with the CV. And there is a process that is set out in the USIF website of multiple selection layers, and then you will be called upon for an interview with a big panel of 7 panelists, and then you get the scholarship if you succeed. And once you get the scholarship, all your contact will be through an organization called the International Institute for Education, which is a US-based organization that executes the Fulbright scholarship, right? And they handle your selection of universities. So you can apply to 4 universities through the Fulbright program, and you can choose to apply to more on yourself. And one of the most important criteria for the USIF master's program is that you should have 3 years of prior work experience, right? So those are some of the broad kind of things that will be relevant. So I would urge you to look at the link. What I also encourage you to do is to attend the USIF events. They conduct kind of interactions with alumni of Fulbright and with the Fulbright program officers themselves, and they give valuable information in those programs. So subscribe to their social media and kind of keep a lookout for upcoming events that should be helpful for you, right? So I and with regard to the kind of amount of scholarship that you receive itself, at least until 2018 and in 1920 when I studied, it was sufficient to conduct the whole course. For most universities, the $80,000 that the US kind of Fulbright provides is sufficient. Some universities might be more expensive, and they might help you get additional scholarship from the universities as well, which IIE helps you with. But otherwise, they provide you with kind of fare for internal taxi travel to the airport, airfare, stipend, which is the minimum wages that applies to a particular state where your university is located, monthly stipend. Then there is an excess baggage allowance and so on and so forth, which is sufficient to undertake a 9-month program in the United States. So those are some of the kind of starting points. And of course, as we get into the question and answer, I'll take up more if the need be. I will pause there because I really think the question and answer will really bring out the best. And I leave it to Aman to take over from here.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Gautaman, and thank you, Seed, for inviting me to speak. So, talking about representation, for me, representation was important because it is important to tell the stories. You need to tell your stories, right? There are stories which are untold, and representation helps you to tell your stories. And my entire trajectory, my career trajectory, have been telling my stories. When I came to Guwahati in 2013 from Delhi, almost no one knew about detention center. No one knew about what is going on with the Foreigners Tribunal. So this is one thing I wanted to do, that I want to tell the world what is going on before the Foreigners Tribunal. What is detention center? How are people detained here? So today, being invited to this platform is a great privilege because we are talking about representation, and this is, like Gautaman said, not like other platform just to talk about how to get in how do you have to get an LLM abroad. So you already know that I graduated in 2010, and I initially I wanted to do an LLM. I applied for in the UK initially, but I did not get through. So for a lawyer, generally, after a decade of practice, you don't want to leave practice. So what motivated me to apply for the Fulbright and to study abroad? So first thing, of course, like I said, is I want to tell my stories. I wanted to be on this
platform. One of the reasons which inspired me was a discussion I had with a Dalit scholar at Harvard when I was invited to speak there. So my friend told me that their intention is to send 1,000 Dalit scholar abroad. I thought that this is exactly what even the Muslims should do. Uh, so I thought that why not apply for some scholarship, because I can't afford to study outside. And if I if I get an opportunity to study abroad, maybe I can also make people way for other people to study abroad. So that was first and foremost motivation, because like I said, in 2020 when I went to US for a few lectures, I had no idea that I'll have to come back here again for my studies. But that conversation with my Dalit friend entirely changed my perspective. So when I applied for Fulbright, what helped me is my work. My academics were not very great, but my work was very unique. Like I said that, when I start working before Foreigners Tribunal, before High Court, taking case to the Supreme Court, no one was actually speaking about the citizenship cases and all. And the entire India also started talking about when only when the 40 lakhs people were excluded, and subsequently when the famous chronology started, the first come CA and then come the NRC. It is only then people started talking about it. But before that, no one really spoke about it. But when I started working, I made a point that there is a gross violation of the rule of principle of natural justice. The rule of law is not being followed. The foreigners' tribunals are manifestly arbitrary, unreasonable, and what I use the language is like slaughtering the values enshrined in the Constitution almost every day. These stories need to be told through my work. Firstly, like through Moin al-Mullah case and through Kismat Ashraf and Mihir Biswas, and then filing, working with Mr. Prashant Bhushan in the detention case, and through our own organization, we filed a case. So through my work, through our work, I told the stories, not just, giving interviews or tweeting or on Facebook or writing articles. I did all through, I exploited all this platform for my work, to tell, like I said, to tell our stories. But through my work, I did this. And this very work helped me, I believe, because like I said, there were people whose academics were far better than me. I am not from National Law School. Gautaman will agree with me that every institution, either it's Harvard, Columbia, or it is every other organization, they are very, very biased towards National Law School. Me being from not a National Law School, when I got selected, I was a little surprised. But yeah, I think it is my work which actually made the selector select me for this prestigious Fulbright Nehru Fellowship. Another thing I think you should consider is when you're practicing. I don't know how many practicing lawyers are here. So what happens for a lawyer now? I'm like defending more than 400 people. I have like 400 briefs right now. When I go to US or anywhere else for my studies, it's like a 10-11 month gap. What happens to my work? So we formed an organization. I co-founded an organization called Justice and Liberty Initiative. We have 6 partners now. One of our partner, tomorrow he will join as an additional session judge. So he was one of the brightest partner in our organizations, and from whom I learned so much. But there are other 6 partners who will be working here in our Guwahati office. So that has helped me to take a break. Otherwise, for a practicing lawyers of 9-10 years, or even 5-6 years, it is not really possible to leave your work and go abroad for studies, because litigation doesn't work like that. Litigation, there is a chain of briefs coming to you, and then the case doesn't end by the end of the year or before your academic session starts. Case goes on and on for years. So it is not really viable for any independent lawyer if they do not have any support system to carry forward the work. So I am blessed because we have an organization, and there are 6 partners who can take forward my work in my absence. So this is one consideration that you really need to consider before applying for abroad if you are a practicing lawyer. And you might work with some senior after 3 years, which Gautaman told that that is the criteria eligibility to apply for the Fulbright. You can leave your senior's office and then go and apply. But because I'm an independent lawyer, this was a consideration for me. And what do you study? So in my personal statement and my study objective, I just wrote my experience. I wrote what I did through my career and what I want to study. So through my work, I feel that the jurisprudence, if any of you who are watching here, if you know, is not really developed. In the name of jurisprudence and citizenship case, we have this Sarbanda Sonwal case, which for me is a flawed judgment. I wrote, the day NRC was published on 31st August. You can find it on the print, where I extensively wrote about it, why the judgment was flawed. So apart from that, the jurisprudence has really not developed. So I, by studying, by joining a law school and by doing my LLM, I really want to widen my horizon. I want to understand how citizenship is decided in different contexts and how constitutions of different countries treat citizenship. Like, in India, we have a jus sanguinis concept, which was not there before 1st of July 1987. Before that, there was a jus soli, and whoever was born here was an Indian citizen. America, through 14th Amendment, they made a law that whoever is born here will be citizens, and they are still that law is still there. It has not changed. There are discussions, debate that the birthright citizenship should not be granted, but the institution of the United States are so robust that they face huge resistance whenever this kind of question comes. Sadly, our institution crumbled before majoritarian views, and the jus sanguinis principle came into being. That was one reason why I wanted to go to United States and not in other countries. So through my personal statement and study objective, this is what I wrote, that I want to study about statelessness, because even about statelessness we don't talk about in India. India is not a signatory to statelessness conventions, and we do not recognize statelessness. So that is exactly what I wrote. So when I go abroad, a lot of people, they tells me that it will be a little difficult to adapt with the classroom. After 10 years, I left in 2010 at MS Ramaya School of Law. But I believe that because I will study things which interest me, that things will not be very difficult. I just hope it is not very difficult, because this is I want to study human rights and comparative constitutional law. That is exactly what I think about day in and day out. So this is how I guess the Fulbright committee selected me, because of my work and because what I want to study and what the difference I want to make after I come here. I don't want to go for further studies like a PhD and all. I don't want to. I want to come back and I want to really make some difference into the foreigners jurisprudence, in the citizenship jurisprudence. I want to work so that one day we can convince Indian government to recognize statelessness, to impress upon the courts that citizenship cannot be stripped at the drop of a hat for minor anomalies, for ridiculously minor anomalies, in spelling mistakes, in variation in the age. So this is what I want to do when I come back here. Of course, I think there would be there are a lot of people who work on different subjects, but if I'm not wrong, I think if you stick to one subject mostly and do good research, work on it for years, more than 3 years, which is the eligibility, I think you can impress upon the Fulbright selection committee. Rather than because in the last 1 year, a lot of people called me and they have done some amazing work, but the work is little diverse. So and I have seen people who also appeared with me, they have diverse work and they did not get selected. I say I might be wrong, but what helped in my favor is because I stick to one issue, and not because I wanted to stick, but this what I do is not only merely cases for me, but it's cause for me. Defending people's citizenship has become my mission of my life. So naturally, it happened with me. And I hope, if you stick to one cause, that might be helpful. That's what I believe. Thank you so much, and I'll be happy to take questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you
I
so much, sir.
Sorry, I see two questions and I took some notes in response to that. Is it okay if I speak now, Hamsaduni?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Please go.
great. Because
For
both
sure, sir. Go ahead.
okay, both questions are fantastic. So the first question, so the nitty gritties is that, as Aman pointed out, there is a statement of purpose. There's a research objective, about what you will study, what you want to study in the US, and then there is the CV that you submit. These three are important documents. And later into the timeline, after you get your, Fulbright, if you after the interview process, you appear for the TOEFL exam that tests your, English fluency, right? And the TOEFL exam has four things: writing, reading, listening, and speaking. And some universities ask, minimum of 25 on 30 in each subsection, and an overall total of a minimum of 100 to 104, depending on the university, right? But let's focus on the three things: the research proposal, statement of purpose. Those are the two main, and of course, CV is important, but really the first two are really important, right? And I think Aman did a great job of saying how he focused on his work, which was really valuable and worthwhile, and kind of it really spoke to the panelists, right? And also, as Aman pointed out, there is really no formula, right? You should just put your best foot forward, and then there are many contingencies and all those things that you can ignore, right? But what really from what Aman said, what really stood out is that be genuine and sincere, right? Something that many panelists on different scholarships have told me is that they have read scholarship applications for so long now that when somebody exaggerates or kind of embellishes, it really stands out, right? And of course, so kind of make sure that your voice and your conviction comes through, right? And how can that be done? Of course, in Aman's case, it was really an extension of the work that he was doing, something that he's passionate about, and kind of is extremely crucial for the country. So it came through and it was successful, right? So I would urge you to, one, remember that there is no such thing as good writing. There is only good rewriting, as I was told by a friend, which I think is a very important insight. So write out your first draft very fast, maybe, and it might be much longer than your regular the prescribed word limit, but then keep rewriting, right? So the first very, very important insight that I was given, at least by a friend, in fact by Darshana, who's a former Fulbright scholar who Aman works with also, is that don't describe, explain, right? We get into this habit of just describing things that we have done. I was this, I did this, I worked for 5 months, I did this, I did that, right? That is not of great value, because the reader doesn't get a sense of who you are as a person. Think of the SOP as their window into who you are. And oftentimes a huge mistake I did and continue to do is that I assume a lot of things. I did a lot of work in life. I've done it, and then I either feel shy to write about it, or I think that people will know. I assume knowledge. So when Darshana read it, she was like, "We worked together for 6 years, across many things, and none of that is coming through in this 2 page that you have given me. So please put in what you have actually done in a very well. So don't describe saying I did this, I did that, I did that. Explain why you did what you did." So in Aman's case, he realized that there's a gap, there's a vacuum for citizenship jurisprudence in the country, and he decided to build it through his work from the very first instance of the detention center, right? And not just a kind of constitutional litigation and then like litigated through it, right? So explain, don't describe, right? Or in the American terms, as I found out later, they say show, don't tell, right? Don't keep telling, but you should show it in the way you write it, right? And it all adds up to really how you write your SOP, and you have to rewrite it, right? The first draft will not cut it. So give yourself at least a month's time. Do not, and I put this to the mail with Dev and Hamsudwani, do not shy away from asking for help. I did a terrible mistake. I thought that people will be preoccupied. I shouldn't take people's space. I shouldn't make them read my SOP again and again and all that. Don't do that. People from dominant communities never shy away. Even if they've met somebody once in a meeting long ago, they will say, I met you in the meeting, please read my SOP, and they'll send it. Whereas we are like, even if we know them really well, we'll be like, nahi yaar, we shouldn't, we will not, I don't want to take their time, or maybe they'll say no, or they might laugh at my SOP or whatever, don't do that. Shamelessly send it to all past Fulbright scholars, or all kind of your professors and everybody, all the stalwarts and so on, for their critical comments, right? So sorry, I'm just going through everything. So yes, another thing I often hear from people is to ask for other people's SOP. Right? Can you please share your SOP? Can you please share your SOP? Right? One at one level, the SOP is a deeply personal document. So maybe people might not want to share it, right? One that. Assuming that's not the case, also, I don't think it's a good practice, because it stifles your imagination on how you want to approach your SOP, right? And you might do something radically different that might actually be rewarded, instead of kind of sticking to a pre-existing trope or a script, right? So it might be helpful at a later stage if somebody chooses to give their SOP also, but don't see people's SOP first. And if you look at Google, there are more than enough Reddit threads, this thread, that thread, on how to write a Fulbright SOPs, successful candidates from Pakistan to across the globe speaking about it, right? So don't get into all that. Put your thoughts first, and then that raw material can be shaped into into a more finished product. But don't think that there's a formula and I need to crack it, so let me get successful candidates and then follow that script, right? So those are mostly the points that I have put in for the comment.
One thing that I would like to answer, Dipankar has asked that also, if you fall short in academics, how can it be filled? So I think I am the best person to answer that, actually, because one, I was not from National Law School or any other national law schools, which every institution is very biased towards National Law School. Secondly, my academics were not great, and it is often said that good lawyers were not bad, good students. So see, your academics might not be great, but you can fill it with your work. For me, it took 1 decade of work, but I really didn't work for a Fulbright. It just happened. But yeah, you can actually fill that vacuum through your work. Do some meaningful work, and take it as a mission. Whatever you do it by heart. But for me, I'm here because my community is the most oppressed community. My relatives have been declared as foreigner. My cousins are not there in the NRC. So I'm bound to do this. I don't know if someone else can find this motivation. If you are really in this deep problem, you can find motivation. Apart from that, to stick with the problem where there is no money, nothing, you do pro bono work, is really, really difficult. But for me, it worked because, I took it as a mission because my community was in problems. So the bottom line is that, to fill that gap of, vacuum of good academics is your meaningful work.
Yes, thank you for saying that. I missed that point. Yes, I'm guilty for having of having attended the National Law School, but I was far from the ideal candidate. I struggled to get through, and I managed barely to get through within 5 years.
But your I think your meaningful work, what you did,
yes,
in this, that stand out. I mean.
Yes, so that is very true. So thank you for reiterating that. I always, I think this is the first time I'm saying it in a public forum that, I went to the NLS as a scheduled caste waiting list 2 candidate, so kind of, I always tell people that maybe I should get a badge of honor for that now. People, because, when people immediately think, oh, NLS means I'm like, DPS, Archipram, and whatever people are there. And I'm like, no, I'm like a waiting list 2 in the scheduled caste category person, and I still deal with it after my Fulbright and all, feel a sense of inadequacy and so on or whatnot. That, of course, it's a conversation for a different time that you can overcome and so on. But yes, you're right, Aman, which is that you must kind of focus on your strengths. So one important question is, should I address kind of my academic deficiency in my SOP or not? That's a very important and great question, right? So one thing you must remember is that as you can see, the requirements in master's program, you need a minimum of 55%, right? So now that is, again, very complicated because a lot of universities have grade systems, CGPA, conversion, all those things. So it doesn't act as a blatant disqualifier. And in my case, let me also kind of put it out that I also did an LLM in India at the Azim Premji University after my BLB honors at NLS. So this was my second LLM at the UT Austin Law School. So, so kind of my APU, of course, I found a newfound love for education, academics, and I just went, gungo with like academics and kind of, excelled and so on, thanks to, fantastic people. But so of course, academics, I would say if you have above 55%, that's great. If you have below 55%, in a percentage sense, still apply, maybe, kind of underplay it and like, see how it was. And kind of, so whether you should explicitly address it or not is a question that can never be resolved, I think. I personally think, maybe you shouldn't, especially if you have other strong strengths, like some fantastic work you have done. You don't want unnecessarily to draw attention and say, I didn't succeed academically because this, unless you think there's a very compelling reason. And all of us think there are compelling reasons to have not done academically well in institutions that don't prioritize our lives and our lived experiences. So, you could sit idle. So I leave that question open for you to ponder about, maybe. But I would say, unless very important, it's not necessary to draw the attention in a substantial way to your academic deficiency. And Fulbright is unique in that sense that, as opposed to other scholarships, which very clearly says that, you need to have straight A's in academic excellence. Fulbright says, as you can see in the general requirement, you must be somebody who does, you must be a kind of an appropriate candidate for US-India relationship, a leader in your field, and things like that. So exploit that, right? And I very quickly, kind of address two things. One is on the return to US question, which came up, which I don't want to miss in the chat box, is that, so it's Fulbright does say, so J1 visa, Fulbright, so when you get Fulbright, unlike other kind of, student visas, which is often F1, you go on a J1, which is a visitor's visa. The US state, this Department of State, the United States government calls you as a guest. So you're kind of, very privileged, you enjoy a lot of privilege, simple things like, they'll take you straight to the visa interview window. And, much to the, kind of disgust of others who are standing in line, or, they will say congratulations and just issue your visa quite quickly because, it's a very honored position and so on. Even in the migration, once you land, I showed my, kind of the DS 2019, and they'll immediately say congratulations and, welcome and so on and so forth. So the point I'm saying is that so J1 visa anyway requires that you need to return to your home country for 2 years. But Fulbright also adds emphasis because they want you to use the knowledge that you gained in the United States back home, right? So I had mentioned, because by the time I finished my APU LLM, I decided I want to teach law. I was teaching law at NLU Delhi and Jodhpur. At Delhi, elective course, and at Jodhpur, I taught a full-fledged faculty. So I said that I will return to teach, which is what I did. I returned and I joined the Jindal Global Law School to teach. So you could, and I did say that. I said, I've taught and I want to continue being in academia. I want to come back and teach. So I would say, if you know what you want to do, state that, right? And the second thing is a very specific one from Bhumika. Bhumika, yes, you can apply for, the other categories, that journalists can apply, other than the LLM program, which is, kind of gender studies, or I think there's a film category, also visual media and film. In fact, I would strongly encourage you to apply. I see that you are saying you have worked, but you haven't. So you have to have finished graduation and then worked for 3 years. So the work that you've done when you're a student might not, or rather will not count. So do study, finish your education, finish 3 years of work. And they're very particular about 3 years of work. One of my friends wrote to ask, because they were short of 3 years, and they said no, that work. So once you finish 3 years, please apply to the other programs and feel free to reach out to me.
Gautam, sorry, you froze a bit.
There is a question for me, I guess. So yeah, I am attending the same law school Gautam attended. It's University of Texas at Austin. And how to select a law school? well, everyone wants to go to this Ivy League schools. I mean, Harvard, Columbia, but they have limited seat. I wanted to go to Harvard actually, but Harvard think that I'm not good enough for them. But my other options were UT Austin because they have something called immigration clinic, and I was very inclined towards it. Apparently, they will also give me an opportunity to to appear for the immigration court and to go to detention center. That's exactly the kind of work that I'm doing here. So I didn't apply for Columbia or other law schools. I applied to Harvard, and my next option was UT Austin. So basically, your whatever you want to study, just look for it. Like if you want to study tech law, I think for that, of course, Harvard is good for everything. Stanford is there, and so you really need to see what you want to study and which are the good professors in these law schools, and so these are the conditions you need to consider before applying to law schools.
Yes, am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, thank you for the university question. So like I said, the Fulbright through the International Institute for International Education will ask you to select 4 universities when you apply itself, and they ask you to have it in as a balanced selection, which in retrospect I realize makes sense. So put 2 maybe Ivy universities, because all of us want to go to Ivy League, and I see the merit to that argument for getting the kind of social capital exposure and so on. And then put 2 kind of safe options, right? But actually at the stage of the application itself, you can put all 4 Ivy also, because it will change a lot once you're selected. Then the people from the International Institute for Education will get in touch with you. They are people who have experience in education in the United States. So I had put IVs and so on, and they suggested UT Austin and a few other programs to me. And kind of I went back to the university websites and so on, and as someone said, it was a good program. It is a good program, having gone through the program myself and having had a fantastic year. And I'm so glad that Aman is also going to be there. I'm actually very excited for him to reach Austin and can send photos of my favorite place from Austin once you're there. But UT Austin has a fantastic program because it's also a small cohort. They take only 30 LLM students, as opposed to NYU that takes 440 and Columbia that takes 330 and Harvard that takes 180 and so on. After Yale, UT is the only school that takes such a small cohort. In fact, there are not even 30 at times. Sometimes there are less than 30. So, you really have a sense of bonding. You are not seen as an appendix to the JD program, but you're taken seriously. You're given the due that you deserve and so on. So UT worked out really well. And I have no doubt that Aman will have a fabulous time there too. But the point is, you put whatever 4 programs, and then you negotiate with IIE once you finish your, you get the scholarship. But I do think that, I think we must slightly go beyond this IV thing because, yes, for instance, Harvard used to offer a human rights program, explicit LLM human rights. They did away with that, I know. So, for a human rights lawyer to not have a focus on, say, human rights and immigration law could be counterproductive, right? So I think, and UT does offer an LLM in human rights and comparative constitutional law. So I would say go through the university websites carefully. Look at the scholarship of the professors who are there, and I know it is an extremely overwhelming process. I know of people who would say, oh, UPenn has that prof, oh, this one has that prof. And I'm like, how do you guys do this? I open the website, I get tired because there's just so much information, right? So I would say do it in a methodical way. Open an Excel sheet or a table and put down universities you like, put down professors there, put down the topics you're interested in, and kind of make a matrix so that, for the LLM, it's not that big a deal because most universities do have something for everybody. Of course, at a level of doctorate education gets even more important to get a best fit. But even for LLM, there is a case to be made for a best fit. And I think you should read through, faculty profile and university programs more. And Bhumika, yes, you are eligible for other categories in the Fulbright Nehru Masters Fellow. I've shared the link at the beginning of the chat. I can share it again. So there is an MA in Gender Studies and also if I'm not wrong, something on film scholarship and media scholarship, something so on. So yes, there are options for non-law students to get the Fulbright program, or even for law students to shift your stream. Yes, Bhumika, as you can see, as you have only, I don't know who posted it, but journalism and mass communication is a category. And so is gender studies. And Aman, I think you have, I mean, a question that you are best fit to take up from Sushravya. There's a hesitancy to apply for any scholarship given that I am a non-NLU student. How do I structure my SOP at this juncture? Please ignore if this has been answered. So I don't know if you want to
Yeah,
repeat.
like I said, it is all about your work, right? Do meaningful work, and your SOP will be structured by itself. It didn't take much effort for me to structure an SOP. I just wrote what I did, the trajectory of my career. That's what I did. I think one reason why Fulbright has a eligibility criteria of 3 years work experience is also because they want to see how much good work, meaningful work you have done. So this is not very difficult for any non-NLU student to get into if you have done good, meaningful work. At the end of the day, your work stand out for yourself. So it's a meaningful work at the end of the day. Write about your work, whatever you are doing, and keep working, and your work experience will 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 help you in the entire process.
Also, sir, there's a question on our YouTube chat about why choose LLM when you have an established practice already.
Okay, so I already spoke about this. I like I said, I wanted to widen my horizon. I wanted to study more about international human rights, about statelessness, about how different constitution treat citizenship, what other countries, how other countries treats its own citizen. Because in India, in Assam, it is India's own citizens who are being declared as foreigner. So I thought, because all these years what I did, my work is mostly drafting. I mean, if you challenge an order of the FT, Foreigners Tribunal, before the High Court, it takes around a week to draft. Translation, and then arguments, and then uh, all little things you need to explain. So my jurisprudence was not really very good. Uh, so because I was so engrossed in my work all these years, and I feel that this if I widen my horizon, if I study more about international human rights law, comparative constitutional law, it will help my work. This was I still somewhere I have this guilt feeling of leaving my work and going, but like I said, I have a team here now who can really take care of my work. They are well trained. I'm working with them since last 3-4 years. So that guilt feeling has reduced because my team will carry forward my work. But yes, it's a big call. If you are alone, if you don't have anyone to carry forward your work, if you're establishing your practice, it's a big call. To leave your practice and go for work growth for 10-11 months.
Uh, I have a follow-up question on this, like Gautam. I remember you told me that you practiced for 6 years and then you started as an academician. Or like, was there, you were teaching and practicing at the same time also. Just can you tell me the shift and what are these two field of law alike, and what can we like? What is the process? Because I've seen many professors at JGLS and various universities are teaching and are practicing at the with the respective courts. I also want to know about that.
Yeah, no, so these questions are important because these are the things that you address in your SOP also. So kind of, what Basava asked in the YouTube chat and kind of what Aman responded is important, because if, you must address this in your SOP, and even if you don't, you might be asked in the interview, which is that, you have a practice here, why would you want to kind of, pursue an LLM, right? So and also even in your SOP, you need to say how the LLM will help you given the stage at which you are in your life and career, right? So so for me also it was kind of, and kind of what Aman said, which is that this narrative trajectory. See, you took some decisions through the 3 years of your work after your education, for very pressing reasons. You know it. It's just that you need to meditate upon it and make sure it comes through in your SOP, and you explain it and not just describe it. So in my case, I did put that even in the SOP. So I litigated in Chennai with Sudha Ramlingam, who is a human rights lawyer. I was with her for close to 2 years, and both in the lower courts and in the high court. And then I was with the Alternative Law Forum in the litigation practice for 3 years. Again doing work in the magistrates courts and so on, and also a bit of the high court and so on. Then I kind of shifted to academia because, similar to what Aman said, you know, I was drafting, and if you're a practicing lawyer, you know that the drafting does take skill and so on, but then it leaves you very less time to do any kind of larger reading for yourself. So I felt that I was constantly working. I actually started off as a capital markets lawyer with Crawford Bailey back in the days in 2010, and then went to work with Center for Social Justice in Ahmedabad for 2 years, where I was a Lawyers for Change fellow. And then, I did Sudha ma'am practice, and then, kind of went to ALF, then APU LLM, then teaching at Jodhpur and Delhi. So I explained it by saying that, I wanted to put my work that I've done across many years in some kind of framework, some term of frame of reference. Otherwise, it felt like, I've done so much, but it doesn't add up. It feels just like independent work that I did. So I said that, I want a, intellectual framework to bring these works together and kind of, take it forward into the classroom. So my classroom teaching also has a very strong focus on law and action, critical legal studies, and, so on and so forth, which I did put in my SOP also. So do reflect on the things that you have done and why you did it. You have the answer. Just make sure you don't assume that the reader will know, and write it in a way that it gets articulated for the reader, right?
There's another question, I think, someone from Assam here, how much time needed to complete the whole process? So see, for Fulbright, I think last year it was May 20th was the last date. So start early. That's what I can say. I mean, you have to write and rewrite. So start early. Take 4-5 months. I would say. So the last date would be like May. This year it was June, somewhere in the June, I guess. Because of pandemic and all. Last year it was May 20th, if I am not, or May 15th actually. Yeah, May 15th. And then the result was announced on 9th of September. And then the IIE takes over. They will only help you to apply for different universities, and that process, like for different timeline for different colleges, universities. For Columbia, Harvard, and all, these are all, I think, November last or December last. By March or by February, they will let you know if you are selected, if you have been selected. So the entire process takes more than a year. And one important thing about TOEFL, I think if you have time, then start preparing a little early, because these are the TOEFLs can get really difficult at times. It is a very complex thing. I found it very complex and also unnecessary. But yeah, spare more time for TOEFL also, because this entire application process for Fulbright, for universities, it takes a lot of time. So keep some time for your TOEFL.
If I could add on to that very important point, one thing is, Fulbright's cycle is very different. The application process for Fulbright starts a whole year before the year you leave for. So if Aman is going to leave in August 2021, he applied in 2020 June, right? So that's like a whole year. Very few, if you see like in the UK programs, kind of Chevening and Commons and all, they have a much later cycle, and it's because Fulbright has a lot of layers and kind of processes, right? And one key thing that Aman said is about TOEFL, which is ridiculous, because we have to constantly prove our English fluency despite going through English and shame and all kinds of nonsense. The thing with TOEFL is, remember, it does not test your English, it tests how good you are at TOEFL, right? That is something that I learned much later, which I wish somebody had told me before. because I went on to take the GRE for other things that we will maybe later. But the thing is, these standardized tests in the United States test how good you are at standardized tests. It does not test how good you are at English. So make sure you prepare for TOEFL. And prepare for TOEFL doesn't mean you learn English. It means you learn TOEFL. You know how many sections are that? If you go through YouTube channels that teach TOEFL, they'll tell you patterns to crack. If you have those insights, it's a cakewalk. You know, I made the wrong assumption thinking that TOEFL means English fluency. We have English fluency, you know, we can put in some effort and go. Of course, you know, it's not, TOEFL is not an end game. You can take it how many ever times. And then, you know, I like, you know, even, you know, I had a very good score, subsequently, but that's not the point. The point is it will, you know, let you have less stress, as Aman pointed out. You know, it shouldn't interfere with your timeline. So it will be much later. You take TOEFL around, you know, October to December window, like kind of just before the application deadlines, which are in December. But remember, TOEFL tests how good you are at TOEFL. So make sure you understand TOEFL inside out using standardized textbooks in YouTube channels, and crack the patterns and go prepared, and not think that, you know, I need to know good English or I need to be great at English and Shakespearean and all those things. No.
There is one question where it said, does the understand human implement in diverse standpoints? Does consistent trajectory? Okay. So see, for me, what worked, what I feel is that my consistent work on one field. And when you write your objective, it is more a personal statement, or SOP, what you call. It is a very personal, as it says, it is a very personal statement. But the study objective, this time it is called a research objective. There's a very technical, 50 lines that you need to write. It is very technical. Technical in the sense, you need to explain what you did, what problem did you find in your area of interest of your work, and what do you want to study, and why US, right? And how this US institution will help you. So it is a very technical one pager, and for that, I think that you cannot mix it up. That I want to study this, I want to study that. I don't think that might help. You need to. I think what helped me and other people also is that they want to study a specific thing. So you might have worked in diverse field of human rights, but you stick to one, right? Where you have done substantial work, meaningful work, and then if you say this is what I did, and this is the legal impediment that I felt, and this is where I want to work. This is what I want to study, so that I can help in this. When I come back, I can contribute to this area and solve this problem, right? So I think you need to pick one thing rather than going. You can mention in the SOP of different things, but then you need to stick to one thing when you write this research objective, because you cannot say different thing. I want to study this, I want to study that. That is not going to help you, and because you don't have that much space, also it is only 50 lines, where it is very difficult to squeeze everything into that 50 lines. So you need to be very specific about what you want to study, and that will come from your work.
I think
someone can elaborate on this.
Yeah. Just before that, I see that there was a question saying, is the deadline to apply for the scholarship over? No, as in that, is it over for leaving in August 2021, as they call it, the fall semester for 2021? Yes, and that's the time when Aman will be leaving for Austin. But it is open for, as I had shared the link at the very outset, and Dev or Hamsani can reshare it. It's open for 2022-2023 academic year. So they have opened the call for already. So you can look at that. Yes, I agree with Aman. Of course, the format changed from the time when I applied. So it is much more restrictive. And yes, less is more. Remember, when you write things, I cannot stress this enough. Less is more, because you do an effective job of less rather than trying to say a lot and failing at all of it, right? So I know, and that's why it takes time to find that inner voice and conviction. And don't think that I will think at end and then put my pen to paper. No, let your thinking and writing process inform each other. First, do a quick, as they say, kind of, it's a kind of, I work on mental health, so it's a problematic word to call it the man. But then there is a piece that says, first you need to write like a madman to put all your ideas. then you become a carpenter, then you kind of shed things, and then you become the architect and you build the paper SOP. So remember that in mind. First write everything, then you can edit and then keep editing, right? And then in the process of writing you will find the conviction also. It's not that you need to have the conviction a priori always and then put it into the paper. Sometimes your conviction develops as you write, and then you can state it, which is not something new, but then I'm just saying the conviction gets clarified as you write. The simple point I'm trying to make is keep writing. Don't think that I'll think, and then one draft two, and then submit it, right? And about the identity question that came earlier and it's come back again, so maybe I'll just quickly address unless Aman wanted to say something.
No. Please address it. I will add after the identity question.
Yeah, it's come twice. So again, you need to, for every word, every line that you put in, ask yourself, is it important? Does it add value to the point that I'm trying to say? Does it allow the reader to get a better sense of who I am, right? So there is no point in just suggesting that I belong to so and so community. You need to go on to say something else completely. But of course, if it is integrated, right? Right? Because yes, so for instance, if you say something like, I think that knowledge is produced through life experiences, and given that I come from so and so community, I realize that the law doesn't work this way, and then I want to focus on this, right? So you need to explain why you speak about your identity, right? So I would of course encourage you to speak about your identity if it is deeply embedded, but I also don't think that Dalit people should always work on Dalit rights only, and so and so people should work on only so and so, right? There might be Dalit scholars who want to work on completely different areas of law, like capital markets. So then your identity might not be as important, but still, if you think that there is merit and you can shape it in a way, for instance, to say that I worked in capital markets for 3 years, I realized that there's a complete dearth of people belonging to the marginalized communities in the law firms, therefore I want to do so and so. Great, right? So ask yourself what additional value you're adding for the reader to get a better sense of who you are.
So adding adding to that, Dipankar. So you can, like in your personal statement, you can add these personal anecdotes. There are certain events in your life that actually changes your entire course of life, right? And that change your perspective. So and that you might face because of your identity. So those little things, if you can, bring in as a personal anecdote in the personal statement. But again, applying the formula of Gautam, that if only it is essential, it is integral to your SOP, then add it. Otherwise don't. And like I said, that if you're a Dalit, you are Muslims, a lot of people I have seen, that they wanted to do something else, but certain things happened in their life and they completely change the course of life. So I think those are the things it is important to mention in the SOP, if at all that event has has a bearing on your career, on the trajectory of your career, which happened to me. So I mentioned about my identity because a lot of things that I do, actually everything that I do is because of my identity, right? So for me it worked. For others it might not. Like Gautam said that a Dalit might want to study something else and not about just something related to identity or human rights or constitutional law. Want to study completely something else. There, your identity might not work. So there is no straitjacket formula basically. Keep this in mind.
That's right. So very quickly, there's one question about, is there a quota in the scholarship? No, there is no explicit quota. It is very, the requirements are very clear. Having said that, I do think that spaces are slowly opening to the idea of wanting diversity in their application pool. In fact, Yusuf, and I see that on YouTube, somebody said, what's Yusuf? I'm sorry, USIEFs. They call it Yusuf, and I get trained to call it Yusuf. But it's really the United States India Education Foundation that executes the scholarship in India. Yusuf does a large outreach so that they can reach to as many applicants as possible, which is why you should stay tuned in with them. So there is, though not explicit, kind of quota, I would say that, people are open to the idea of diversity. And I have a separate question in my direct message, but I think it might be worthwhile to address it largely also, is really on how to go about this whole whole thing of like, Ivy or good university. It's an elephant in the room. Let's state it. I'm going to state it. So the IIE, the International Institute for Education, when I was applying, when I was saying that I will go only to an Ivy, they told me that the US is not all about Ivies, and there are fabulous, universities that you can study in. And I'm not just saying this as a consolation, but I truly think that's true. So I would say do a balanced application process. I will never say don't apply to the Ivy or don't go to the Ivy, but I'm saying, do a balanced one. So if you're putting two Ivy, put two, so again, it's not that, there are the Ivies and then there are terrible institutes, right? So there's like a huge gap in between. Oftentimes for LLM programs, students I know are guided by the US news ranking. There is the whole T14, T15, T16. And in fact, in UT Austin, it's huge because UT always fights for the T15 position. We are on a cusp. So we keep like, so UT says it's not T15, it's T16. And there's a whole politics going behind, US ranking and whether these rankings have any merit and so on and so forth. I would say, try for the Ivy, great. But I also think if you don't get it, it's not the end of the world. It might just work out really well for you. And I wasn't really planning on kind of sharing this, but I think maybe I can go ahead and say this. I went to UT and I stayed very less in the law school. I actually went and spent all my time in the Department of History and the Department of Sociology. I took courses in the history of medicine and critical race theories and so on, and then moved on to apply for my anthropology PhD, which I will be pursuing from fall 2021. So I don't think that would have happened if I had gone to some other university. So I would say go with the university that so do a balanced application. And don't be disheartened if you don't get into the Ivy. And there are great universities. Of course, if you tell me some very, very unheard of university in a very, very kind of rural United States, I might warn you against it, saying maybe not, right? But then if it's broadly within the top 50 of US news and you have a sense of the program and so on, you will have a good time, really. So just go ahead. So there is a question on masters in social work. Unfortunately, I do not know great programs in social, or rather the best programs in social works. But maybe if you drop your email ID. So okay, no. In fact, I'll do a better thing. So the USIEF website has the database of all past Fulbright scholars, including the Fulbright Nehru Masters Fellows across disciplines. If you go to the USIEF website, if you look at fellows, past fellows, you can search them year-wise, university-wise. You can do all kinds of searches. Feel free to search, find people who work in your area, to programs that you like, went to universities that you like, and just mail them. You will not lose anything by do not feel reluctant or hold back. Right. So I'm sure there are people who have done masters in social work, and then you can also look at the PhD scholars who are doing PhD in India, but went for research in the US. You can look at, the teaching fellows. All of them have done fantastic work, gone to different universities. So use the USIEF website to reach out to people who have done, work in the area that you want to work, or go to universities that you want to.
I think we may have a last question now.
Very quickly, there was a question on should we decide the country before the scholarship? Again, yes, this is a dilemma many people I know face. I didn't, because I just applied to Fulbright and then went ahead. But there are a lot of people who think, should I do UK LLM? Should I do US LLM? Should I also apply to Chevening, Commonwealth and Fulbright, or should I do it? Which way? So there are two ways to look at it. One thing is to say that these are very cumbersome processes. So you might not have the wherewithal to take care of so many scholarships and then so many university applications also. But the other way to look at it is that the requirement for these scholarships are very similar. So it's very easy to tweak and apply broadly, right? So I leave it to you to do the research and so on. And also the application fee for applying to particular universities, Fulbright takes care of it. So you at least for the 4 universities that you will apply through Fulbright, these are very expensive application fees ranging from $80 to $100, which adds up to a lot. So make sure that your application fee is also taken care of it through some scholarship processes. And this is slightly irrelevant, but never incur debt in your pursuit for education abroad. You are all great and you will succeed in whatever you want to achieve. So I would say UK, US, you do your research, feel comfortable, think about timelines, think about requirements, and see what works best for you.
Do we have any other questions?
There's one about designing your own course. I think everything else has been addressed.
Yes, I see that question. I'll answer very quickly. I understand that we are 15 minutes off call, and I know that Aman has some prior commitment at 8, if I'm not wrong. So very quickly to the question of you can design, yes. So there are universities that provide for independent research, which is a great opportunity. I did it myself, where you can do an independent research with the faculty that you like. So the first semester, I took a lot of courses, found out the faculty I resonate most with, and went on to do an independent research with one faculty, I continue to work with her. I continue to stay in touch with her. She's fabulous human rights scholar, Karen Engel. Yes, and then and also at UT, and I think in all other universities, you can take courses from other departments. So I took courses in the Department of Government on comparative judicial politics, and the others I have already mentioned in the Department of Anthropology and History and on. So yes, you have a lot of flexibility in designing your courses. So you should do research on that also. And US websites over communicate. There is nothing that you will want to know and is not there. And even if it is not there, please write to any email ID on the website and they'll reply promptly. So just be proactive and alert and enterprising, and do not shy away from seeking.
Also, if
you would like to answer, please do.
Dave, you can share my email ID if anyone want to reach out, to share their SOP and all. I'm more than happy to help.
I know it's really time, but this question is important. The one by Parvez, there is a kind of bias towards human rights work and all those things. I recently spoke to somebody who succeeded in Fulbright, who did completely financial law, and I continue to provide insights into other Fulbright applications which don't do that. It might seem like that I don't know the statistics on that, but I can assure you that there have been successful candidates who have done investment law, trade law, in every year who went on to be selected.
Roads is mostly, I think, the fresh law graduate does it. I mean, right from the law school they get selected. So I don't think it's much on human rights and all, because I have seen a lot of students who have done something else, not only human rights, and there are successful candidates, no doubt about it.
I think that's it. I think all the questions have been answered. Thank you so much for going almost 20 minutes beyond the time to answer these questions. And all of these answers have been so insightful. I'm sure all of us have so much from the session. Thank you, Aman sir. Thank you, Gautaman sir. And thank you for sharing your emails as well. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us. We hope to see you in tomorrow's session as well.
Take care. Thank you for having me.